Tensión al rojo vivo. Un asesor de Vladimir Putin ha lanzado una advertencia final a Washington tras acusar a Kiev de terrorismo. Vamos a estar escuchando qué es lo que tiene que decir este asesor de Vladimir Putin, como decimos, de Yuri Ushakov, que prácticamente sería, vamos a decirlo así, el brazo fuerte de Rusia, o en este caso el brazo fuerte de las negociaciones, comparándolo un poco con Witkoff. Vamos a ver qué es lo que tiene que decir y cuidado porque la cosa se pone calentita, no lo siguiente. Atención.
This afternoon, a telephone conversation took place between Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump. By the way, this is already the 8th telephone conversation between them. The discussion was lengthy, lasting almost 2.5 hours. It is clear that it was highly substantive and at the same time an extremely candid and trusting conversation. Our president began the conversation by...
Bueno, de 2 horas, como digo, no siempre tiene que ser bueno, ¿eh? Muchas veces cuando se hace las conversaciones, las mejores conversaciones son las concisas y claras, porque las de 2 horas parece que le están dando muchas vueltas a lo mismo, ¿no? Pero vamos a escuchar.
By congratulating Donald Trump on his successful efforts to normalize the situation in the Gaza Strip. This peacemaking activity of the U.S. president is highly valued in the Middle East, in America itself, and in most countries around the world. Naturally, Russia's principled position was outlined in favor of a comprehensive Middle Eastern settlement on a generally recognized international legal basis, which would guarantee sustainable peace for all people in the region. Special emphasis during the telephone conversation was placed on the issues of the Ukrainian crisis. Vladimir Putin provided detailed assessments of the situation, emphasizing Russia's interest in achieving a peaceful political diplomatic resolution. It was particularly noted that during the special military operation, the Russian armed forces completely hold strategic initiative across the front line. Under these conditions, the Kiev regime resorts to terrorist methods, striking civilian targets and energy infrastructure, to which we are forced to respond accordingly. Donald Trump repeatedly emphasized the need for a swift establishment of...
Bueno, es curioso porque los rusos siempre indican, oigan, nosotros nunca atacamos si no nos atacan antes. O sea que, digamos que Ucrania, a ver, Zelensky ha recibido ataques el día 16, día 17, lo hemos estado viendo en la cadena, pero siempre en relación, dicen, o por lo menos los rusos, que es porque han sido atacados antes. Es curioso esto también.
Peace in Ukraine.
O tal vez porque falta información a nivel europeo, es decir, porque no salen las imágenes de los ataques ucranianos a los rusos. Esto también sería interesante que lo publicaran en ambos periódicos, en ambas partes, porque claro, si no, esto se convierte en propaganda al final, ¿no? Si nos omiten una información que yo creo que sería muy importante tenerla sobre la mesa.
The notion that the Russian-Ukrainian conflict turned out to be the most challenging to resolve in all of the U.S. president's peacemaking efforts was clearly present in his statements throughout the conversation. Of course, he mentioned in this context his successes in settling 8 other regional conflicts. It is notable that one of the main theses of the American president was that ending the conflict in Ukraine would open up tremendous prospects for the development of economic cooperation between the U.S. and Russia. Incidentally, on both sides, there was talk of deep mutual sympathies among the peoples of both countries, vividly manifested during World War II. It was emphasized that the current state of bilateral relations looks paradoxical against this background. The issue of possible supplies of long-range cruise missiles Tomahawk to Ukraine was also touched upon. Vladimir Putin reiterated his thesis that Tomahawks will not change the situation on the battlefield, but would significantly hurt relations between our countries, not to mention the prospects for a peaceful settlement. Against this background, it is noteworthy that the presidents discussed the possibility of holding another personal meeting. This is indeed a very important moment. It was agreed that representatives of the two countries would immediately deal with the preparation of the summit, which could be organized, for example, in Budapest. It is also worth mentioning separately that our president highly appreciated the personal efforts of the spouse of the U.S. President, Melania Trump, in reuniting Russian and Ukrainian children with their families and asked the U.S. President to convey the best. Would say that the telephone contact between the presidents of Russia and the U.S. was very useful and both leaders agreed that they would remain in touch. Thank you for your attention. Yuri Viktorovich, may I ask a question, please? Yes.
Bueno, a ver, ahora vamos a ver la pregunta que le hace el periodista, pero visto lo visto, estamos comprobando que Yuri Ushakov prácticamente sí que está bastante contento con Donald Trump y con esta conversación telefónica que ha tenido con Putin. de 2 horas, por cierto, él mismo lo ha confirmado, ha sido una conversación de 2 horas, así que imaginaros lo que se han podido decir en ese tipo de conversaciones. Y ya sabemos que normalmente cuando una conversación es demasiado larga, a veces no significa que sea buena, ¿eh? También hay que decir eso. Pero bueno, vamos a ver qué es lo que confirma el periodista. Lo que pasa que con las palabras de Yuri nos hace entender que sí que la conversación más o menos ha sido buena y ha ido bien, que eso es lo que nos puede calmar un poco. Vamos a escucharlo.
Please. Donald Trump stated that a high-level AIDS meeting will take place next week, which will precede a summit or meeting between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. It is known that Secretary of State Marco Rubio will represent the U.S. delegation. Do we know who will represent our delegation from the Russian side? I already mentioned that the presidents agreed that representatives of the two countries would begin working on preparations for the summit. This work will evidently begin with a telephone contact between Secretary of State Rubio and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov. May I ask one more question? Based on experience, when might such a high-level meeting take place? I just said that the respective representatives will discuss this issue. The discussion will start in the coming obvious days with a telephone contact between the U.S. Secretary of State and the Russian Foreign Minister. As the representatives work, as the Foreign Minister and the Secretary of State work, it will likely become clear when the summit can be organized. Who suggested choosing Budapest? I can say that Budapest was first mentioned by President Trump, and our president immediately supported the idea of holding a possible summit in this European capital. Can I ask another question? You mentioned that the Russian president congratulated Trump on a successful peace plan for Gaza. Did Trump, in turn, congratulate the Russian president on his birthday? You know, honestly, it didn't come to that. I can say that the conversation took place at our initiative, but no one raised the issue of the birthday. No, it wasn't addressed. The birthday was on October 7th. It's long past, isn't it? Or is this of concern to someone? Yuri Viktorovich, Trump will have a conversation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky tomorrow. Did he say whether he would make a decision on supplying Tomahawks before meeting with Putin or if he would postpone this decision? Trump mentioned that he is meeting Zelensky tomorrow and also said that during the contact with Zelensky, he will take into account the considerations expressed by the Russian president during today's telephone conversation.
Bueno, esto es lo que comentaba Yuri. A ver, de todas formas hay que decir que si este nuevo meeting de Marco Rubio y Lavrov, cuando se lleve a cabo, que como decimos aún no se ha llevado a cabo, porque dice, primero habrán conversaciones telefónicas. Es curioso porque Donald Trump, claro, había dicho, se van a llevar a cabo nuevas conversaciones, un nuevo summit, veremos a ver si es en Budapest o donde sea, pero primero tienen que hablar por teléfono a ver si pueden llegar a algún acuerdo. Prácticamente esta paz está completamente rota, pero no por parte de Putin, según dice Yuri, porque claro, el hecho de que Putin diga, mira, de acuerdo, nosotros queremos la paz, pero es que Zelensky lo que quiere es Crimea. Zelensky quiere que todas las zonas ocupadas vuelvan a territorio ucraniano, cosa que esto no va a pasar, ya lo ha dicho el propio Yuri, Putin, todos. Dejad en los comentarios qué es lo que opináis, como siempre nos vemos en el próximo capítulo aquí en John Helton Noticias, amigos, un saludo y hasta luego.